Hello, welcome to a new edition of the Right Wing Populist Podcast. I am the Right Wing Populist. So today I want to talk about Batya Sargon, this dumb News Nation host, attacking JD Vance, Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, and Nick Fuentes. Uh, I'm going to play the clip in a little bit, but this, Israel Firster, for those who don't know who Batya Sargon is, she's like a populist in theory, or even maybe even like a left-wing populist. Doesn't exist, but she calls herself she's a populist. Although she's really more like a right-winger. If you actually look at the things she talks about and supports, she's sort of like Dave Rubin, except even more pro-Israel and even more establishment-leaning. So she says she's sort of on the left, but she loves Trump. I think she even supported Trump in this past campaign. But extensively, she calls herself, she's like a populist, but she's not really a populist, folks, as we'll get into. But before we get into it all, I want you to subscribe, whether it's on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to this amazing audio experience. The amazing blissfulness that's in my voice. I hope you enjoy it. And also, if you are listening on YouTube, please like and subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. It helps with the algorithm. The traffic on YouTube's been great the last couple of weeks. Let's keep it going, folks. I don't want to have to resort to starting an OnlyFans, folks. Support the podcast. I got nothing to hide. I mean, I do really well on OnlyFans, I think, but I don't want to put that link in my bio, folks. So let's support the podcast. Let's support this amazing, like I said, audio experience. I really appreciate it, folks. So yes, Batya Sargon. She's a host on News Nation. She is in love with Israel. She'd be wearing her Star of David necklace, which is fine. We love necklace. I wear a necklace that has a cross on it. I respect it. But the problem with Batya Sargon is she's like Israel first. And she was a big supporter of Trump striking Iran, as if that was beneficial to the United States. And extensively she's on the left, but she's not really on the left, folks, because the left doesn't like Israel. And, so this clip I'm about to play, this for the context, is, you had a America Fest, Turning Point event. And as I talked about last week on the podcast, you sort of had, or on Saturday, you sort of had a not debate because they weren't actually talking to each other, but you basically had two sides sniping at each other. The Ben Shapiro wing of the conservative movement or conservative media, and then the Tucker Carlson wing of the conservative movement or conservative media. And they were sort of sniping at each other. Ben was basically saying that we shouldn't platform certain voices that are conspiracy theorists and that are don't like Israel, essentially. He didn't actually say that, but that's essentially what he was saying. And Tucker was like, no, Charlie Kirk was against censorship. We don't deplatform people. And that's what was happening at this Turning Point event. And I would note, Ben just said stuff that wasn't true. I already talked about this, so I'm not going to get into it too much. But he even called Daryl Cooper basically a Holocaust denier. It's like Daryl Cooper's not a Holocaust denier. I don't like Daryl. I don't really care about Daryl Cooper. I'm not I've listened to a little bit of his content, but there's no evidence he's a Holocaust denier. He's been a little bit critical of Churchill, which is you can't be critical of Churchill, I guess. I don't know. I thought we believed in free speech on the right, but maybe we don't. If you don't like Churchill, all of a sudden you're a Holocaust denier. I don't know what the problem is, but I guess that is the problem. So this is what was taking place. And then J.D. Vance, at the same event a few days later, he gave a speech. And he did mostly side with the Tucker wing, and you'll see it in the clip I'm about to play. J.D. specifically said that he wasn't here to, denounce people, to cancel people, and that, part of Trump's coalition that he built in this past election was about, not denouncing people, essentially, bringing everyone together. But apparently that wasn't good enough for Batya Sargon. So I'm going to play the clip. I'm going to play the clip of her attacking JD, attacking Tucker Carlson, and then I'm going to break it down what's really going on here.
America Fest was overtaken with a single urgent question. Do far-right podcasters and conspiracy theorists have a place in the conservative movement, or should principled conservatives show them the door? Should conservative leaders make it clear that there is no room for white nationalists, Holocaust deniers, and proud racists? Or is that kind of gatekeeping too close to the left's cancel culture? And should it be abandoned for an open-door policy? Do people like Candace Owens, who blamed Charlie Kirk's family and friends of being complicit in his murder, or Tucker Carlson, who gave a cozy interview to a white nationalist, Nick Fuentes, have a seat at the table, or are they beyond the pale? This debate has come to define the conservative influencer sphere, and it dominated America Fest. Ben Shapiro gave the opening salvo with an impassioned speech about the importance of setting limits and keeping out the racists, the cranks, and the anti-Semites.
The conservative movement is also in danger from charlatans who claim to speak in the name of principle, but actually traffic in conspiracism and dishonesty, who offer nothing but bile and despair, who seek to undermine fundamental principles of conservatism by championing enervation and grievance. These people are frauds, and they are grifters, and they do not deserve your time.
His speech became fodder for many of the speeches that then followed, including Tucker Carlson's and Steve Bannon's, both of whom denounced Shapiro and the whole idea of gatekeeping. On Sunday, the vice president himself took the stage and took a side. He threw his weight behind the Carlson wing, opposing the idea that conservatives and the conservative movement should have limits.
President Trump did not build the greatest coalition in politics by running his supporters through endless, self-defeating purity tests. I didn't bring a list of conservatives to denounce or to deplatform.
Now, this wasn't surprising. After the Carlson interview with Nick Fuentes, the vice president demurred from denouncing the white nationalist, though Fuentes had used a racial slur about Vance's own wife, Second Lady Usha Vance. Many, including the vice president, want you to believe that the split is not over racism, but over Israel, that it separates people who are very pro-Israel from those like Carlson and Vance, who supposedly understand that young people don't like Israel and want us to cut ties with it. But as Turning Point's own polling found, this is nonsense. Just 13% of those in attendance don't see Israel as an ally. Charlie found something similar when he polled young people at the last Student Action Summit. 73% called themselves pro-Israel. The divide is not over Israel. It's over those who are too afraid of Candace Owens and Nick Fuentes to say in no uncertain terms, you guys are bigots and true conservatives should be able to denounce that. And those like Vice President J.D. Vance, who are too afraid to do so, too afraid to alienate the support of Holocaust deniers and white supremacists and people who would blame a grieving widow of being in on the murder of her husband. After he spoke at Turning Point, an interview with the vice president was published in a British publication in which he did, finally, denounce the man who had attacked his wife. But even then, he blamed both sides. Quote, "Let me be clear," says Vance, "anyone who attacks my wife, whether their name is Jen Psaki, the former Biden press secretary, or Nick Fuentes, can eat it." Now, let it not escape your notice that Vance didn't denounce Fuentes from the Turning Point stage, where he had a live audience of 30,000 young conservatives and a televised audience of millions more. He saved it for an online publication that isn't even American. Truly, a profile in courage. For those already anointing the vice president as the GOP nominee for 2028, you might want to slow your roll. Leadership is about having principles and standing up for them, no matter the blowback, not being afraid of offending.
Oh my God, that was painful. That was so painful to listen to. My ears are like bleeding. I'm like Trump after he got shot. There's just blood coming out of my ears. It's insane. Oh, God. Man, I'm going to have to scrub my ears after doing this podcast. That was so painful to listen to. Her voice is annoying. How is she on television, folks? You could hear her voice like practically cracking like she's a 13-year-old boy going through puberty. What the fuck? You can just hear she's like, oh my God, the vice president is siding with Tucker Carlson. You must support Israel. It's like, calm down, Batya. It's okay. Relax. Jeez, that was painful. What? So let's break this down a little bit. So first off, let me just say where I think she has a point. Candace Owens sucks. I've talked about that also on my podcast. Candace is crazy. She's got them crazy eyes. She's like some of these girls I've dated in the past. You know, they just like go berserko at some point in the relationship. And Candace has gone berserko, folks. So I got no problem with Batya Sargon attacking Candace Owens. Got no problem with that, folks. Candace sucks. And she is saying stuff about Charlie Kirk that is not true. So I have no problem with Batya Sargon attacking Candace Owens. Okay. Candace is saying stuff about how maybe Erica Kirk was in on the assassination. Maybe his friends were. Maybe Israel was. Okay. I'm not the biggest fan of Israel. Anyone who listens to my podcast knows that. But there's no evidence Israel was involved in killing Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk was, generally speaking, he was a supporter of Israel, not a critic. Why the hell would Israel want to kill one of their most prominent supporters? If anything, the fact that Charlie was kind of nuanced but still leaning pro-Israel was like one of the best things you could ask for if you were Israel, because he didn't come across as a hack. So the idea that Israel would kill Charlie Kirk is just a non-starter. So I got no problem with Batya Sargon attacking Candace Owens. She should be attacked. She's the worst. But the problem is that she also brings Tucker Carlson into this equation, and she tries to suggest that Tucker and Candace are in the same boat. Now look, Tucker he's defended Candace Owens because I guess they're friends or whatever. And, Tucker doesn't believe in denouncing people and deplatforming people and cancel culture. So Tucker's just being principled. And, Batya essentially accused Tucker of being like a conspiracy theorist and a white nationalist. Why? Because he interviewed Nick Fuentes, folks. He interviewed Nick Fuentes. It's like, what? He interviewed Nick Fuentes. That's why Tucker that's why Tucker shouldn't be able to speak. That's why he should be excised from the conservative movement, because he interviewed Nick Fuentes. Who gives a shit? When you say friendly interview, remember, I need to actually start playing some of the clips from the interview going forward, because this is so important. He pushed back on Nick Fuentes. He just did it politely. That's all Tucker did. He didn't agree with Fuentes. First off, he got Fuentes to acknowledge that bigotry is bad, anti-Semitism is bad, racism is bad. He got Fuentes to acknowledge that stuff, and I'm supposed to be mad at Tucker for that? That's a good thing, not a bad thing. It's a good thing that Tucker got Fuentes to acknowledge that a bigotry is bad. Why the hell should I be mad at Tucker? What? These people are just folk, calm down, Batya. I understand you're mad that Tucker didn't throw like a pie at Fuentes' face during the interview, but that wasn't the point. That wasn't the point. And then she goes to J.D. Vance. And by the way, this is the point where she sort of gives the game away. She's saying this isn't about Israel, but then she starts defending Israel and says that, J.D. Vance would want you to believe that this is just about Israel and that young people don't like Israel. It's like, yeah, young people don't. And then she cites a ridiculous poll, a Turning Point poll, that shows that young people like Israel. But that is extremely disingenuous, because the poll is of young conservatives, young Turning Point people, young people who are part of Turning Point, people who go to these events. Yeah, if you isolate it from that specific demographic, they're going to be much more pro-Israel. But if you look at young people overall, the data is clear. Young people do not like Israel. They do not support the United States backing Israel to the extent that we do. The data is, I'll read you some of the data. It's clear. So Batya, the fact, number one, she's giving the game away by bringing up Israel. I mean, how could you say this isn't about Israel, but then bring up Israel and try to defend Israel and suggest that it isn't as unpopular as it is? I mean, it gives the game away. But then she attacks JD for siding with Tucker Carlson. And, she says, maybe we should slow our roll on making JD the 2028 nominee because he's refusing to denounce Nick Fuentes. Why does JD have to denounce Nick Fuentes? Why is Nick Fuentes important, exactly? I understand he's become very popular these days, but he's the vice president. He doesn't have to denounce him. And he has he's made the point, I think posted in 2021 about Nick Fuentes on Twitter, when he actually said he was against censorship, even though he thought Nick Fuentes was garbage. That's what I want in a vice president. I want someone who can simultaneously acknowledge when someone is garbage, but also be against censorship. That's a good thing, not a bad thing. But like I said, let me read you some of this polling data about Israel, just so I can show and make it clear that Israel is not popular, particularly among young people. So this was a Gallup poll conducted in 2025. It found that favorability toward Israel had dropped significantly among young adults 18 to 34. Only 38% of 18 to 34-year-olds view Israel favorably, down sharply from when the last time they polled it, which I think was like in the 50s. In contrast, older adults, 55 plus, remained positive toward Israel, 71% viewing Israel favorably. There was also a Harvard-Harris poll back in mid-2025 that showed a majority of Gen Z, 18 to 24, supported Palestinian positions in the Israel-Gaza conflict, and even sided more with Hamas over Israel, 60% of Gen Z. Now, I'm not saying that you can have to agree with young people on Israel, or, I don't side with Hamas. I don't side with Israel. I don't side with either of these. I think both of them suck. I think Hamas sucks worse than Israel for what it's worth, but I don't like Israel. I don't like Hamas. But the point is, her trying to suggest that Israel isn't unpopular among young people was just so disingenuous. And she did it by just citing a Turning Point poll that's just among people who are young conservatives, who are, they are part of the Turning Point movement. So yeah, if you look at that specific demographic, they're going to be much more favorable toward Israel. But that doesn't matter, because again, if you want to build a coalition, you have to understand that Israel is not popular, particularly among young people, Gen Z, even some millennials. That's just a fact. So I just want to make that clear, because her point she was making was disingenuous. But the reason she's making the point isn't trying to be disingenuous, because this is partially about Israel for sure. There are people on the Israel firsters, the pro-Israel side, who they're concerned that JD is even more of an isolationist, even more of a America firster than Trump is. And Trump's been very pro-Israel during his presidency, whether you agree with that or not, that's just a fact. But I think there's concern that JD won't be, and that JD's a true believer in putting America first, even if that doesn't benefit Israel, period. So, I don't know why I said period. I feel like I'm dictating for my website that I used to run, period. My brain fart. Maybe I should edit that out. I might have to edit that out. We'll see. I don't like editing, but I might have to edit that out. But the point is, that's what this is really about, at least in part, is Israel. There's no question about that. And by the way, JD's speech was awesome at Turning Point at the America Fest. He talked about how we shouldn't be afraid to be white anymore. You don't have to be ashamed to be white. That's awesome to hear the vice president say that. No one should be ashamed of themselves based off their race, whether you're white, black, Hispanic, Asian, whatever. So that was good to hear. So JD's awesome. And again, she gives the game away when she starts talking about 2028. There is the old never Trumpers, the Ben Shapiros, the Mark Levins. These people, they don't want JD to be the nominee, or at least they prefer he not be for the Republicans, because they're concerned he actually is America first in a way that Trump even isn't. So that's what this is all about. And you can be pro-Israel, but you just have to recognize that Israel's not that popular. And most conservatives, particularly young conservatives, they do want to put America first, even if it doesn't benefit Israel directly. So that's the reality. So her attacking, it just shows you, again, she's terrible. Batya Sargon is the worst. Again, essentially saying that, JD's a coward for not condemning Nick Fuentes on the stage directly. It's just, JD doesn't have to do that. Nick Fuentes isn't even worth his time to do that. Who cares if he's attacking his wife? JD shouldn't give Fuentes the time of day, whether you like Fuentes or not. JD shouldn't do that. So, anyway. Yeah, she sucks. Batya Sargon sucks. Anyway, and one other thing. It does look like Israel is going to try to get the United States involved in another conflict with Iran, and even try to persuade Trump to try to change the details of the ceasefire in Gaza by trying to give him territory on the Gaza Strip even. So again, part of maybe this pressure that JD's facing and why they're going after JD is because they want JD to not get in the way of Israel's goals, whether that be continuing to escalate with Iran, trying to change Israel's borders to give him more land, give him more control of Gaza. I mean, the whole situation is actually kind of sick if you think about it. I'm a little troubled by the whole thing. So, And J.D. Vance will be the Republican nominee in 2028. Make no mistake about it. He will be the nominee. I mean, and maybe I'll get into this just a little bit, but like Ted Cruz, it looks like he's seriously considering running. There's been multiple reports from Axios and the Washington Post that Ted Cruz is seriously considering running. Which, by the way, if he does run, that'll be a disaster. Ted Cruz has no chance of beating J.D. Vance. No one has a chance of beating J.D. Maybe Marco Rubio, just because he seems to be really well liked by the older generation in the Trump movement, the MAGA movement. For which, I hate Marco Rubio. I hate him. Believe me. I don't like little Marco. I don't like him. I hope he doesn't run. And Marco has said he won't run if JD runs, so that's good. But other than Marco, no one else has a chance of beating JD Vance. So if Ted Cruz wants to run, that's fine. He'll get humiliated worse than he did by Trump in 2016. I mean, he really thinks he can become the Republican nominee by just being a cuck to Israel. Good luck, Ted. Good luck, Ted. So, we'll see what happens. But I just wanted to point this out because there is a big shift against JD by people on the pro-Israel side, definitely on the right pro-Israel side, and trying to denounce people like Tucker because he interviewed Nick Fuentes. It's just so stupid. It's so left-wing coded. That's the other thing. I thought we were against censorship on the right. This whole thing just sounds like censorship. It sounds like left-wing censorship. It's like the same thing with right. Like on the left, if you're critical of, let's say, affirmative action, they'll call you racist. But now on the right, if you're critical of Israel, they'll call you anti-Semitic. It's just so left-wing coded. It's so gay. I'm just sick of it. I don't even like talking about Israel. I don't even want to, believe it or not. I just feel like they need to because Israel's becoming such a dividing line in U.S. politics, especially on the right now. And when I see all these pro-Israel commentators going after JD, it's very telling to me. It's very telling. Anyway, we'll see what happens. That's it for the show today, folks. Thanks for listening. I don't know if we'll have one tomorrow. Tomorrow is Christmas. Merry Christmas, folks. I forgot to say. Merry Christmas. There may not be a show tomorrow because of Christmas. We'll see what happens. But we'll be back Friday and then Saturday. So that's it for today. Again, please subscribe, whether it's on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. I greatly appreciate it. You guys have a Merry Christmas. I hope you get all the gifts you want. I hope you kiss that crush under the mistletoe. Hopefully with her consent. Anyway, hope you have a Merry Christmas, folks. We'll be back soon. Bye-bye.